Thank you again for being here. Always, again, fun to see new faces, but also some of those people that we already know. Get on the right screen. It'd be great. My name is Dr. Rhonda Blackburn. I am the co-chair of the Professional Development Committee for TxDLA and also sit on the board as actually, I need to change that. I'm the CIO now. And a lot of stuff, but one of the things that I absolutely love about doing these is the love of learning. And I get to do that all the time because I get to hear all these really neat, cool things. And especially today, I cannot wait with my friend Valerie. I also see Kelly just jumped on. So Kelly, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dr. Kelly Irwin. Oh, and I need to change this slide as well. I'm now the Director of Education for Learning.com. Rhonda and I need to do a little work cleaning up our slides here. I am a former teacher, classroom tech apps, GT specialist, etc. I'm also obviously co-chair with Rhonda. I also work with our sponsors for the conference and throughout the year to try to bring new ideas and information to our constituents.
Well, obviously y'all are here for the webinar, but just in case you got sent a link instead of going to our website, you can always find them at our website under webinars, and it's the bite-sized learning. And we try to put up there as quickly as we can so you can register and know what's coming up. You also, if you are a member, get access to all of these recordings pretty much for life, as long as you're a member, but you also get them briefly after the webinar until you join. So of course, today we have engagement escalation and gameful approach to instructional design with Valerie. Next month, just to kind of think about the future, on the 13th, we have break the forgetting cycle with Get More Math. So we hopefully will, it doesn't even have to be math, right? We forget things all the time. So maybe they can give us some really good tips on how to do that. The next thing that's coming up for us beside our webinars is our fall leadership workshop. It is in Fredericksburg, which if anyone's ever been to Fredericksburg, a beautiful area. That is November 1st through the 3rd. If you are interested in becoming more involved with TxDLA or stepping up into the leadership, this is a great workshop to go to with us. Also, put it on your radar, March 25th through the 28th is our in-person 2024 conference, and the virtual part is going to be April 16th through the 17th. It is game on, so it's perfect for today, right? So hopefully y'all will be able to join us for that as well. Again, this is a Zoom meeting, and so it is being recorded. You do have the option to use the chat. You can open your mic if you have questions or want to talk to Valerie, but try to keep it on mute just so we don't get background noise as we're going through things. And now I'm not going to talk anymore because I'm going to hand it over to Valerie and let her start telling us about engagement.
So much. Thank you for it's always fun to come back to the clubhouse and play and have some fun with everybody. Boy, Kelly got off camera as fast as she could. Look at that. All right, we're gonna get my slides going here. There we go. And then I'm just gonna move this little chat window so I can see what you all say, because I know you all are gonna be very active in the chat. I'm gonna invite you in there. The chat bar is open. Chats are free. Drinks are on the house, or chats are on the house, or whatever. So feel free to use that. As Rhonda said, looks like we had a pretty well-behaved group today, so there will be some opportunities if you want to ask questions and actually unmute yourself and verbalize them. I just ask that you kind of, do the reaction, hold up the hand so everybody doesn't jump in at once. That would be helpful. All right, so let's get going here. Engagement escalation, what's this about? Well, for me, it's a gameful approach to instruction or instructional design, or however those words, I think I did them slightly differently than in the title, but that's okay. It's the same thing. I promise. All right. As I said, this is intended to be interactive. I do not expect you to talk at you for the next close to an hour. I would suggest that if you don't have one handy, kind of sneak over, grab yourself a little scrap piece of paper, something to write with. That's going to help you out in just a minute. And then, of course, I'm sure I'll say something brilliant you want to write down, but we're going to do a little activity, and having that piece of paper and something to write with will help you. You'll be ready to hit the ground running with that. Also, this one you can answer silently. Some of you I see are still coming in. Welcome, welcome. Room for everybody. You can answer this one silently. the next question, or you can put it in the chat if you want to make a public commitment about it. But I'd just like for you to think about this question for one moment. So, scale of 1 to 10, as you watch this adorable bunny, how engaged do you intend to be during this session? And again, there's no right or wrong answer here. We're just going to take a moment as we enjoy the little scenery there. We love the bunny. All right, 9. That's awesome. I'm going to explain why I'm doing this in just a second. But again, no right or wrong answers. We all bring a different energy and a different capacity on different days. Some days you might be a 3, and that's okay. But one of the reasons I asked the question is the science behind it, which is if we do make an intentional plan about how we're going to participate in something, it does impact our experience and it does impact the outcomes and things like that. Also, one of the basic premises of gamification, game-based learning, any of those things, and I will tell you, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on definitions and things today, but my definition of gamification is very expansive. It is a big umbrella that encompasses everything from playful design to serious games and everything in between. So when I use gamification, I'm using it very broadly. One of the basic tenets is small wins quickly. So one of the reasons I asked you to do this activity was I wanted you to engage in something very quickly, because the likelihood of you now continuing to engage has just gone up highly, because I've gotten you to take a small action very early on. It was a very low pressure thing. I didn't even ask you to put it public. I said you could just think about it. But it was a small win. It got you thinking about things. It got you engaging in a way, and that primes you to be more engaged as we go along. So I'm going to kind of deconstruct some of these things as I go along. That's sort of the thought process and the science behind why I did that. So that's one reason I did it. Another reason is, in the words of my dear friend and colleague that Rhonda also knows, Jimbo Clark, connection before content. If I just start talking to you about any topic, you may or may not listen to me. You may be interested if you're really interested in the topic, but by connecting first. Several of you mentioned, oh, a bunny. I made a slight connection with you on some level. You know something a little more about me, like, oh, she likes animals. Okay, that's kind of cool. That's something like that. So connection before content. And that's something that many times we're in such a hurry to get to. We have to teach this topic. We have to get going. We have so much to cover, and, meetings, we do that too. We got a lot to do today and just got to get going. Take that brief moment. It will make a big difference to what happens later on and how much people will be engaged. All right. And just as I expected, I love it. I see lots of people hopping into the chat. I'm going to try to keep track, but I know Rhonda's back there. And if you see something urgent, Rhonda, please holler it out. If somebody has a question that I miss along the way, because I only have 2 eyes, and I'm sure I'm going to miss a comment here and there, but I'm trying to keep track a little bit. All right. So this session today is part of a much larger workshop, and it kind of started with this meme about, I don't think that means what you think it means. And I didn't mean it in the sense of that you're wrong, that somebody's definition of learner engagement is wrong. But what has happened often in conversations I've had with people is we have different definitions and we mean something different by it. So I don't think that's what it means, but that's what you thought it meant. And if we're not talking about it in the same way, we're going to have a hard time getting the learners engaged until we kind of had that common conversation. So that's a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. The other thing is that we say learner engagement like it's this completely understood concept. And everybody knows what we mean when we say that, when in fact, it means a lot of different things. Kind of like I said, the word gamification can mean a lot of things. Learner engagement means a lot of different things. So today I'm going to invite you to kind of dig into it a little deeper and be a little more specific about what you mean when you say you want to engage your learners. So that's going to be part of what we're going to be focusing on today. Sound good? Give me a couple of thumbs up or yes or no or something in the comment, just so I know that we're all together. All right. And we're going to go on. All right, there we go. It's like somebody's got to tell me yes or no or something. You can disagree with me at any time. That's okay too. I'm not expecting everybody to agree with everything. But One other comment, just going back to sort of the gamification realm. One of the reasons that I focus so heavily and I encourage people to explore gamification, even if you're not technically going to be gamifying your courses or your instruction or anything like that, is that gamification is not this one thing. It draws from a whole host of disciplines. I just listed some of them on the screen. These aren't even all of them, but it draws from all of these different disciplines at the service of the learner. And that's my concern. My concern is coming up with the best design, whether it's gamified, not gamified, whatever, the best design for the people I am serving. And I'm going to call them generically today learner. I know some people don't like that term, but fill in the blank with the noun of your choice, your clients, your customers, your students, your faculty, whatever word feels right for you. We're doing this in the service of them, and we're learning from all these different disciplines. So it would not be a gamification or gamified webinar if we didn't have a little challenge. So that piece of paper that I asked you to get out a moment ago, or you can take a little snap of the screen if you would like to. But I want you to document somehow this little puzzle. So there's 18 letters. I've given you 5 of them already. So you've got 5 to start with. Look at that. So you're going to find 13 more letters, not so carefully hidden throughout the presentation. You're going to figure out where they go, which blanks they go into. And by the end, you will have one of the messages, one of the takeaways that I encourage people to think about whenever they're using gamification or any type of learner engagement, customer engagement, anything of that nature. All right, so I'm going to pause for a second. I think most of you probably have been able to scribble this down, and or somebody already knows the message. Well, don't give it away just yet, Douglas, okay? If you already know, you might have seen me do this before. Yeah, shh. Yeah, okay. But you can hop in right at the end and we'll see if you're right. All right, so moving on. Whenever I talk about gamification, there's 3 words that usually come up. I'm going to talk about 2 of them today. Because the first word that comes up is fun. I am not going to talk about how to make your learning more fun. Because for me, generally speaking, when somebody comes to me and they said, I need your help with gamification, if I just make it more fun, everything's going to be great. That's a pretty big red flag to me, that there's probably a design issue that goes beyond, we just need to make it fun. And fun is just honestly very difficult because it means so many different things to different people. But as you're going to see, if we design appropriately, the fun is sort of inherent. It sort of bubbles up and people will find the fun in the experience. So we're not going to worry about word number 1 of fun. The other 2 words that people talk about and we are going to focus on are motivation and engagement. So I think those words have to kind of be talked about a little bit together. So we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about motivation for a second. And again, we could spend the whole hour just on that word. But people come to me and they swear that all of their students or customers or whatever have this t-shirt underneath their clothing. Like Superman or something, like hiding this. They all are wearing this t-shirt that says they're highly motivated to do nothing. And I always invite them to reframe that and say, do you mean that they're not motivated to do what you want them to do? Because that I can understand, and that's something we can talk about, but let's start with the right questions. And another way I encourage people to reframe this conversation comes from Edward Deci, who the name might be familiar to some of you if you've ever heard of self-determination theory. Deci and Ryan were the co-authors of that theory. But this was something that Deci wrote in a separate book. And when I read it, my brain just kind of went, whoa, we're asking the wrong questions. Maybe we shouldn't be asking how to motivate somebody. Maybe if I focus more on designing the right environment. So maybe if I reframe the question, I'm going to find a better solution. So this is just something, again, not a right or wrong answer to any of this, but it's a different way to look at this concept of motivating people, that it's not something I am doing to them. It's an opportunity. It's an invitation, basically. So something to think about there. Also, Question for you. And this one we can put in the chat. If somebody feels strongly they would like to answer it verbally, please just use your reaction, raise a hand, and we'll take turns unmuting. But do you think that learner motivation and engagement are related? And if so, sort of the follow-up there, if so, tell me a little more about that. Why do you think it is? How do you think it is? A little bit. So yes, Deborah says yes. Okay, I'm hoping Deborah's going to elaborate for me a little bit on that, or someone else is going to jump in and add some more conversation there. And then I will tell you my. Okay, Kelly, yes. I'm more motivated if I'm engaged and vice. Okay, so you see a reciprocal sort of relationship there. Great. Again, no right or wrong answer here. There's going to be a lot of different angles we can take this from. Douglas, the more interested or invested they are, the more likely they are to engage. Definitely some ownership investment. Love that. Raul says, yes, I find students put in as much as I do. Thank you. Thank you. I often get to go into institutions and say things to professors and people that other people, because I get to run away afterwards. And I often remind people that one of the easiest ways to get people engaged is to be excited yourself about what you're talking about. If you're not excited, why would they care? Right? I also I'm always going on this constant learning journey myself, because if I'm going to ask other people to do that, it's not fair for me to go, well, I know everything and I don't have to learn anything else. So that's my take. So great. Some other people are typing. Let me run back over here and see what's going on. Yes. If you're engaged, you want to know what's next. Motivation. Yes. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you. Thank you. Motivation coaches should be good at this. A passion to lead. Jim Calhoun. I could speak. There we go. Does a good walkthrough on motivating, self-motivating his players. Yes, there's a lot about motivation that comes from sports sciences and behavioral economics and all those spaces. Again, there's lots to learn from all these places. Thank you so much for all the comments and everything. So I'm going to give you a quick analogy, and then I'm going to sum up my answer, because I'm a simple girl. I like a little simple answer. So first, there's no sound to this, but just a nice little analogy here about a flywheel. And if you're not familiar with, some of you may be familiar with flywheels from pottery or automotive type things, or you've seen one on Mythbusters. They had a really good episode about. Okay, so, oh, look, the momentum. Got some momentum going. That wheel is turning. All right. So why am I showing you a picture of a flywheel, you might be wondering? Well, I think the flywheel demonstrates my sort of simple answer pretty well. You notice in that video, it took a lot of effort to kind of get going, get the wheel moving. But once it got moving and we got into a loop, into what I'm going to call an engagement feedback loop, things picked up momentum and we kept things moving. So my little summary: motivation gets you to move. Engagement keeps you moving. So we do often have to put a little effort into getting things started. That could be setting up the right environment. That could be giving people a little nudge. That could be a lot of things. But once we get them in motion, it's a lot easier to keep something in motion going, like that flywheel does. And then it starts to pick up momentum. And you've probably seen that in an interaction in a meeting or in a classroom or something, where one question comes up and then somebody responds and then somebody else, and then suddenly sort of the whole room, the energy sort of starts to bubble up a little bit, because things start to get moving much more quickly. So that's kind of the idea here. So the last thing I'm going to say about motivation for today, if you haven't looked at the work of BJ Fogg, he did Tiny Habits, and he spent a lot of time on motivation and persuasive technologies and things like that. But what he shows, and this is where people sometimes get stuck with trying to design for motivation alone, like I just need to motivate people, is you notice on his chart, you have to cross that green line to have an action take. It's like a jump rope. You have to get them over that line. The motivation has to be super duper 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 high before somebody's going to jump over that line if we're focused solely on motivation. And so that's why, especially in a learning context, it's really hard to get somebody to that level. Now, they can get to that level on their own. If any of you have ever tried to teach a young boy to read, to want to read, you may have struggled with that. I've heard many people have struggled with that. But if you give that same young man, let's say, a deck of Magic, the game playing cards, suddenly they're reading everything in sight because they want to understand the strategy and how this card goes with that card and how they're going to beat the opponent and how they're going to. And so suddenly their motivation shoots up high enough that they jump over that line and they're willing and wanting to read. So it is possible to get over the line, but it's harder. The ability thing is where we talk about things like breaking your content into smaller pieces. We're not talking about making the content easier. We're not talking about dumbing down less rigorous content. What we're talking about is making it easier to participate in. This is also where your accessibility things come in. Big A, accessibility, and little. I've often said, if I'm a single parent and some professor wants to give me a 3-hour lecture to watch, that is not accessible little a to me because I don't have 3 hours. I might have 10 minutes and 15, and I might be able to chunk it out and look at it that way. So ability, we need to think of not just in terms of can I do it, but how we're enabling someone to do it. So that's the last little thing just on the motivation thing, because they do, as several of you commented, they do have an interconnection there. And we can't really talk about one without talking about the other. All right, I'm going to pause for a second. I saw some very nice comments popping through here. Some good discussions, some more about the motivation. Yeah. All right. And some more about the flywheel. Yep. Some good stuff. I hope everybody, if you don't have a chance now to read the comments, definitely, there's always good resources in there. It's like a whole nother little session of content sometimes. All right. So moving along, we're going to come back to where we started with the learner engagement. And I'm going to give you 4 types of engagement. Now, that does not mean there are only 4 types. It doesn't mean these are the best 4 types. But again, with the spirit of let's dig in a little deeper and let's really get to what we're trying to accomplish when we say we want learner engagement, because that is going to change in different settings and in different contexts, and could be day to day even, might change. You might notice that it goes through cycles. If you're teaching like a semester long course, there may be different facets of engagement that are more important at different times in the course. So here's the 4 we're going to work with today. And I want you to start thinking about it, because I'm going to ask you for each one to come up with what are some current ways that you either are trying to engage people in this manner, or you are ascertaining or assessing that they are engaged in this manner. So either one of those. So here's our 4 we're going to start with. So we have our cognitive engagement. That's thinking. I'm just to make it a nice instructional design, like verbs, right? So thinking. Behavioral engagement, we're going to call that the doing stuff. We have the social engagement, which is I'm going to call sharing, is be part of that. And then emotional, we feel it. We really feel it. Okay. So again, these align with, I've had people go, oh, well, I talk about affective domain, and yes, whatever sort of structure you're accustomed to, I'm not trying to replace it. I'm just saying, here's 4 that I think help us have a conversation about different ways that we can engage people. And again, you're not going to usually be doing just one, you're going to be using bits and pieces, but you may be, oh, in this case, I need a lot of social engagement and not as much of the cognitive. And another one you might be, I need a lot of behavioral. I need them to participate in this activity. So again, those are going to, like little sliding scales, those are going to move around a bit. All right. So cognitive, here's our first one. So what are some of the ways that you engage your learners cognitively, or you check to see if they are engaged cognitively? And this is a pretty easy, there's a pretty easy answer to how do we tell if they're cognitively engaged. We'll see if that's the first one that pops up today. Let's see if I'm right. There's one word that usually pops up first. Let's see. As people get shy on me. Again, no right or wrong answer. Just, okay. Start with a think about it prompt or image, video, brainstorm. Okay, Kelly did not come up with my first word. That's okay. I forgive you, Kelly. Using polls. Okay, yep. We use live polls and yeah, Zoom polls. I love it. I love it. These are all good. Ask a question. You all, it's like you saw my slides ahead of time. Ask a question to see where their current level. Oh, I love that so much, because how often do we dump content on their heads and then ask them a bunch of questions instead of kind of asking them a question up front? Inquiry. I love, thank you. I love this group. Thank you. Because usually the first answer I get is, we give them a test, we give them an exam, we give them a quiz. And those are ways to assess that they're thinking about it, what their cognitive, engagement with the content is. Those are good ways. These are so much better. These are so much better. And they do fall in alignment with more of what I would say is the gameful approach to thinking about things. So many of you did mention questions. I always say, ask beautiful questions. And that phrase comes from a book by Warren Berger called A More Beautiful Question. And in it, he describes that, there's like regular, I don't remember what he calls them, but I'm going to call it a regular question, like, oh, what did you have for lunch today? That's just a question. It's not really a thought-provoking question. A beautiful question is one that has the capacity to shift our thinking and really gets us sort of in that cognitive space. So I like that phrase. So I've been saying, ask beautiful questions. So yes, absolutely. And as I said, flipping it around, asking a question, having, as some people said, inquiry activity, where then they can explore and discover more of the content, is a beautiful way to get people engaged. They have ownership of it. That topic came up earlier in one of the questions. They take some ownership of it. They have curiosity about it. Sometimes just the novelty of it, because that's not what they've experienced in other learning experiences. So yes, all of those things. And yes, love it. All the quotes and everything. Goran's got me covered with references and quotes, and I love it. Yes, it is important to not to stop questioning. Curiosity is one of my, I never outgrew that sort of childhood, So that's why one of my brand things is Valary with a Y, because I never stopped asking why. I ask it all the time. I also ask why not a lot too. So, all right. So another way that we can get cognitive engagement that's very simple to implement in many cases is to let them choose their own adventure. By simply giving people a choice. It could be a choice between two things. Maybe it's doing a more traditional assignment versus a more creative assignment. It may be letting them express themselves in a different way, instead of everything being, write an essay, answer these questions, that sort of thing. Giving people that other opportunity, or giving people an opportunity to explore more, to do things, we'll see in a minute, to do things in a slightly different order can make a difference. So choosing their adventure. And as I was putting these slides together, I recall that in 2020, I was here in the clubhouse talking about this. And I actually did a whole session that was choose your own adventure with some of you were there. And so as I was talking, I talked about mindset, and then we went on a little trip and we got to the intersection of action and adaptability. And you all voted. I let the audience vote what I was going to talk about. And so then we did that topic, and then we continued on our journey. And the next time you had 3 choices. And again, people voted. One of the topics won, and that's the one I talked about. So something very interesting, however, happened after the session. What do you think might have been one of the questions I received after that session of letting people go through and people voted and chose which topic I was going to talk about? Any ideas what a burning question people had was? Ooh, Kelly wants to know about preparation and time. Okay, that's a good one. Can we do it again? Yes, that's very close to it. Yes, Carla, what about the topics we skipped? I built curiosity in there. I had people going, wow, but what did we miss? There's a little FOMO in there. What did we miss by picking the ones we picked? What was in those other ones? Now, to Kelly's question, preparation and time, it honestly did not take me that much longer, because as I was preparing it, I was coming up with ideas, and I had more ideas than I really could cover in the hour or whatever it was. And so this was a fun way for me to not have to decide which content to cut out, basically. And then in many cases, I've done this in a couple of different settings. I generally, pre-record a little message about each one, or I write up a little message about each one, so that if people do want to go and follow up on one of the other topics, that's available. So there's a little extra prep time, but I would not say it's a significant amount of extra prep time. And I would say it's worth the extra. And sometimes what it is just moving content from one place to another. So those other topics might have already been in another part of a workshop, or if this was a longer engagement, they might have been somewhere else. This way, I just let people kind of, do it their way. So it was just a different way. Again, there's nothing wrong with a little novelty. The brain loves novelty. It likes that freshness, but it likes familiarity as well. So this was a structure that kind of fed both of those. So thank you. Lots of things there. Yeah, and this is, I've talked to other designers of like branching scenarios and things, and my question to them is always, what was your replay on that? And specifically in branching scenarios, what was the replay if someone completed it correctly the first time? And in many cases, if it's done well, the replay is really high, because people want to find out what could have gone wrong. So depending on what your subject matter is, if it's something that is high stakes, one of the courses, and the name is eluding me at the moment, but it was done for the Army. It was before people went to some officer training, before they were sent overseas to Afghanistan. This was high stakes. So they gave them this scenario game-based thing first, and they had an incredibly high replay, even if the people got the answer right the first time, because they wanted to know what could go wrong on that mission. So this kind of structure can be pretty powerful. And as you see, it's not hard to set up. It may take you a little extra time, but again, I don't even think it generally takes a lot of extra time. So I would encourage you to kind of play around with this idea. And I see a couple of people. Kelly likes it. So if Kelly likes it, I'm good and I'm moving on. All right, let's move on to behavioral. So what are some ways right now that you either get people behaviorally engaged, or you confirm that they are behaviorally engaged in whatever you're trying to teach them? Teach each other. I like that one. Anybody else? This isn't a virtual class, so I'm not going to pause until I get the 75% response. Don't worry. I just want to give people a moment, because I know sometimes we forget, oh, I got to open the chat. Oh, I got to type something. Oh, all right. If you think of something, you can keep those ideas coming. Apply in a real world scenario. Absolutely. Absolutely. Those are both really good places to start. I'll throw these in. Also, giving them clear pathways and detours. That t-shirt at the beginning where it said, highly motivated to do nothing. A lot of times what looks like a lack of motivation can actually be confusion. If somebody is stuck, if somebody doesn't know what to do next, if the pathway is not clear, if they get stuck on one piece and they don't see that there's like another thing they could go try to do instead, or to get them around the problem, they just don't do anything. They just get stuck. So behaviorally, it's always best if I can keep people in motion. So I want to make sure that the pathway is clear to begin with, but I also want to give them those opportunities to kind of detour a little bit. That works for your people who are ahead of schedule in the learning and people who are behind schedule. It helps those who are behind schedule, because doing some things out of order can actually increase completion rates. There's been a few people who have looked at some large data sets from their institutions, and they found that if people did a few activities out of order in a self-directed training, that they actually had higher completion rates. And that makes sense to me, because I think it gets them around that stuck, or maybe it just, that topic wasn't as interesting and this looks more interesting. There could be a lot of things there. And then also it can help the people that are actually ahead of schedule, because what happens sometimes when you have a large group, you have some people who are kind of, they're on schedule. They're kind of going down the track. Some are going to be finishing things much faster. And so giving them a detour can be one of those, you've unlocked additional content because you completed the activity, the first 24 hours of the week or whatever it is. hey, here's another, here's something else that you could go and explore. So again, it keeps them in motion. I don't want somebody to finish something at the beginning of the week and then they have to wait for everybody else to catch up, because then they lose momentum. So the more opportunities I can give them to kind of weave around and things like that. All right. So yeah, anytime I see Suzanne's talking about any kind of interaction with content or other learners or the instruction. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I want them interacting in as many different contexts and ways as we can get in there. And yeah, and Rhonda likes the alternate path. So hey, try it out. There we go. That might be in your next program. Behaviorally, also, this is kind of related but different. Nudges and hints. Some people object to this, like, well, they're adults and they should know, and they, I shouldn't have to remind them of things. And I'm like, well, do you ever forget things? Like, I don't think nudges are a bad thing. And nudges also can serve a lot of purposes. If somebody is stuck, doing that early intervention and kind of getting in there and going, hey, I want to help you through this because I know you want to finish this. And so nudging has proved to be extremely powerful. There's whole books written about it. So nudging is a good thing. Hints, if you're in a classroom situation, I'll talk more. I've seen this in the K-12 space more. Things like earning some bonus points, and they don't necessarily go toward the grade, but you sort of accumulate some, whatever you want to call them. They don't have to be called bonus points, but whatever credits, currency you create for your classroom, you could trade those in. I've seen teachers let somebody trade in so many of their credits for a hint about an assignment or a hint about, a question, even on a test or something. You have to decide what works for your context. But again, those type of things empower people, because now I get to make a decision about how I'm going to utilize my bonus points. There's a little strategy there. I may even be able to share them. Maybe I can pool them with other people. Maybe we can get together and pool them to, I don't know, have the class gets an extra day on their paper or something, whatever. It's only limited by your imagination. There is really no limit to any of these sort of gameful ideas, but I encourage you to, just explore, just like a little bit further past whatever you're doing. And what could we, and what else could we, we could do that. And we could do this maybe other little piece. So that's my encouragement there. All right, we're on to social engagement. What type of things do you do to keep your learners socially engaged, or to check to see if they are being socially engaging? Any ideas there? I can hear the wheels turning, the thought processes. Discussion prompting, yes. Discussions, team activities, yes. These are all good. So yes, we're focusing on people and getting people to interact with one another in different ways, including something in a task where they need to go talk to someone. Yes, doesn't have to be within the class. Thank you, Rhonda. Yes. Absolutely. I love doing activities, and that's actually, we're going to get to that in a second, activities that involve people outside of the class. Everything doesn't have to stay in the little box. If it's online, try to find something that isn't a discussion board. Yeah, there's so many other options out there in terms of letting people share in different ways. Again, I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's a matter of sharing, giving them the option to share their mastery in a different way, through maybe more creative. Instead of a paper, maybe they do something more graphical. Maybe it's a poem instead of a paragraph, or it could be all sorts of things. Gallery walk and talk. There's many different. So yes, so social, and there's a lot of tools out there to help with that. Some of you heard me talk before about things like Topia, which is a spatial chat. I always say it's what would happen if a video game and Zoom had a baby. So you have the video screens and you're interacting with people, but you have a little character that's moving through the space. So you get to choose which conversations you're part of. I'm not locked into, we're all in this one Zoom room right now. Even beyond breakout rooms, this gives you a lot more agency and just and just a little cooler experience. There's lots of ways to do this, lots and lots and lots. A couple more ideas here in the social thing to think about is the psychological safety and inclusion. And again, I'm a big fan of choice and providing people alternate ways to do things so that they are more included. I'm not a big TV watcher, but if anybody recognizes this picture, it's from Modern Family. The character's name is Gloria, and she's often ridiculed and made, they poke fun at her because she misstates things, or she doesn't get an idiom, or her English, they make fun of the way she speaks. And this one moment in one of the episodes was so poignant, and I've used it in a lot of sessions. And do you even know how smart I am in Spanish? Like, different people come with different capacities and different skills, and expecting everybody to participate in the same way can be very excluding for people. I was teaching a gamification workshop last year at a university, and we were doing a learner persona activity where we were encouraging people to really think about who the people they were designing for were. And as I walked around, I walked past the table where the director of that university program was sitting, and he just looked up at me. And one of the characters that we were playing with was the first one in their family to go to college, not a native English speaker. There were a lot of things. And he just looked at me and he says, "That's me." He's like, "Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging like how hard it is to, participate in certain academic settings and certain learning settings when he had the background that he had." So I think this one's really important. I think games and gamification are getting better at it. This is, for me, was one of the problems with games and gamification from the beginning, was the accessibility factor was harder and was lacking in some ways. But I think there's a lot of improvement that's been made in that space. So I'm very happy to see that. Also, back to Rhonda's comment a moment ago, social beyond the cohort. Like, everything does not have to happen in that little space with just the people that are in that class. Having activities where you go talk to other people. Having activities where one group that's going through the course talks to another group is very powerful. I ran a big program years ago, and we had cohorts who went through a 6-week program, and at the end, they would leave messages. They were anonymous messages. We called them, it had a space theme, so we called them postcards from space. And when the next cohort started, we delivered these postcards to them. And it was just little messages of encouragement. And it was little tips on how to tackle the program, how to get the most out of it, things like that. So they just had these lovely little messages that they got from somebody who had just gone through the experience and wanted to help the next person along. So finding ways to engage socially that go beyond the traditional is also good. Yeah, and I see Roll uses different platforms. Those are also absolutely, there's a ton of platforms. If you have other ones that you like, please put them in there. I know a lot. I know some of you, and I know many of you use things like Padlet. I know people use Mural. There's lots of platforms to help people collaborate and engage in different ways. So yes, keep those coming. If you have suggestions, what your favorite one is, I'd love to hear it. I always try to collect new ones that I haven't heard of. So, all right. Now, finally, we get to emotional and feeling. That's our last one we're going to talk about today. So currently, is this an area you even consider engaging with? Do you do anything currently to engage with somebody emotionally, or get them feeling something about the information or the topic, or the experience or anything like that? Let's see. While you're answering, I'm going to go and take a peek at what other people have been writing that I have missed. All right. Yep. I love it. Lots of good resources in here. What are feelings? I love that. Yep. I've had a few. I've had a few of those as well. All right. We're not a touchy-feely group today. I can tell. That's okay. Yep. Ties back to the connection. Be real. People want you to be real. People don't care for perfection. There's always going to be the one. Your video wasn't, fancy enough or whatever. Yeah, being open and honest. These are all really good ways to connect with people and make them feel something. A couple of other just simple ways you can incorporate them into your learning experiences is by using stories and characters. Characters are really fascinating because people immediately just go, oh, well, it's a story, it has characters. But when you're thinking about designing a gameful experience, you have an opportunity to use characters in different ways. You could have a character that your learners have to help overcome a challenge. You could have a character who is helping, who is the guide. I've seen professors turn themselves into characters who are in their syllabus and are sort of the guide that goes along. So they've sort of created this other persona that exist within the lesson. So you have characters that way. You could have a character that is the bad guy that the learners have to get together and overcome some challenge and beat the bad guy. So this concept of character goes beyond story. It can be just a separate thing. Yes, Bitmoji, I see. I've seen some more and more people using that these days. Absolutely. Storyline. You can do all sorts of things. Customer service. Yes, helping. I love it. See, I'm feeling a little useless now. You all have already got all this good stuff, and I'm so proud of you. It makes me happy that people are doing more and more of this. This is wonderful. But yes, stories just activate the brain in a different way. So whenever you can incorporate story, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of that. All right. Another one in terms of our feeling and emotional is going to be, don't forget to celebrate. This is big in gamification. There's some differences of opinion about reward systems and things like that. I don't think you want to reward everything. I think you want to recognize participation, but you want to reward accomplishments. So everything doesn't get a badge. Everything doesn't get a, I clicked the button, I get a badge. No, we recognize, we do it. But there are those times that it's really important to celebrate. And I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and I got a chance to see the Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield, and I was just so excited to be in the same room with him. But one of the things he talked about when he was working with astronauts at NASA and elsewhere was, don't wait for the end to celebrate. And that's another beautiful gameful sort of thing, is finding those random moments, finding those little things to celebrate along the way can make a huge difference in keeping people going. And so just find those little moments. So I'm gonna wrap this all up into one little story. And this happened a couple of years ago. It was actually the first time I was sort of piloting the engagement escalation program of workshops and sessions and things. And I had my little presentation. I was on my way to the conference and I'm on the plane. And this flight attendant did something that caused me to rewrite the whole end of my presentation, because she did a better job of summing up these four than I could have done. I'm going to share what happened on my flight. I was going from New Orleans to Orlando. Now, I was not prepared to film this, so the picture's not the highest quality. I apologize, but I didn't know what was going to happen ahead of time. We were halfway through the flight. We're going to Orlando, so as you might expect, there were a lot of extra ears on the plane. People were going to Disney, going to see the mouse. But halfway through, the flight attendant comes on and makes an announcement. Now, immediately people were cognitively engaged, because that's not a time we're accustomed. We don't expect people to be coming on and making announcements in the middle of the flight. So everybody's like, what's going on? Looking around a little bit. And she says, it's come to my attention that somebody on the flight has a birthday. And so now half of the flight went, ah, and the other half went, oh, okay, I can go back to reading my book now. Okay, there's not an emergency. So she says, where's Greta? I hear Greta is 5. So on the left side of the screen, you see a little hand. That would be Greta's dad trying to prop her up a little bit and hold little Greta up. So Greta's 5. I'm sure Greta's going to Disney. Flight attendant says, so it's Greta's birthday. So we all expect at this point, our expectation is that we're probably going to sing happy birthday, right? That's a reasonable expectation. But no, that's not what happened. So then she says, I'd like, if you're sitting next to a window, I'd like for you to reach over and close the window shade. She has now moved us into behavioral engagement. She has asked certain people to take an action. She wants them to participate. And because she was either a school teacher or Mary Poppins in a former life, she pauses and says, I'll wait while everyone closes the window shades. So she's going to wait and get compliance on this one. So the window shades, you see the people closing them up. So we've got behavioral. Now she says, okay, next I need everybody to look up over your heads and find the call button, not the button that turns on your reading light, but the call button. And I need you to turn that on. Now, half the people on the flight had absolutely no idea where that was. So now we have conversation. You hear, you hear a lot of murmuring as people try to figure out which button they're pressing. She's gotten some social engagement going, in addition to the fact that we're participating in this together. She's got people talking to one another. So the lights come on, and that's what you see in this picture. All of the call buttons have now been turned on. And you'll see she got compliance on that one. All of them are on. And she says, thank you. You are all now part of Greta's birthday cake. And I tell you that plane gasp, there was an audible gasp on the plane. You could feel it. She went right past social, right into emotional engagement. She had people, and all of you are muted today, but some of you, wherever you are, I can still tell. Some of you did the same thing and went, oh, that's so cool. I can't believe that. So we sang happy birthday. She said, okay, Greta, when we finish singing happy birthday, I want you to blow out the candles. And to the rest of us, okay, I need you to turn off the call buttons. So sure enough, we sing, Greta blows out those candles, and you hear ding, 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 ding. And we were all back in our plane, just heading to Orlando. But I guarantee you, I am not the only person that has ever recounted this story. I may be the only one who's done it in a gamification setting, but I am not the only person to retell this story, because what she did was take the things she had around her, just very simple resources. She had a captive audience. She had call buttons. She had some imagination, and she made magic for not only this child, but for everybody on the plane. Because I am sure a lot of people left there going, wow, that was such a nice experience, that somebody would do this. So that's my message to you, is it doesn't take much to get the engagement going. It really doesn't. What it requires is just our intention, our effort, our creativity, which is going to bring us back to, we'll see if Douglas was right, drum roll, and somebody beat him to it, but yes, the answer is in fact, think big, but start small. Because that's really what it takes. It takes us thinking bigger, thinking differently about engagement, thinking differently about gamifying things, thinking differently about education and all of these things. But we do have to start small, test it out, try something. Just try something. It may not work. I try a lot of things that don't work. Try it and then build on that. Lean into the successes and just build on that. So that is my gift to you today. We've unscrambled the eggs. People say you can't do that. You can unscramble eggs. My gift to you today is, if you go to, and I'll put it in the chat, if you go to this link or you scan this QR code, there's some additional resources that I gift to you today. Gamification starter kit, some other stuff. There's a bunch of stuff. There's copies of these slides and all of that. And I see we have a couple of minutes left. So if anybody has any last questions or comments or anything, the floor is back to you.
So does anyone have any questions for Valerie? I know we're all soaking it all in.
There was a lot.
And I loved your story. I had tears in my eyes.
Aw. Okay, I'll put the link in the, I think I typed that right. Yep. Okay. Well, thank you all. But more than loving it, my challenge to you is go and try one of these things. Go and try it and then report back and let us know how it went. Even if it didn't work, that's okay. Because sometimes we got to figure that out too. We got to figure out that was not the right thing for that group. Might be the right thing for a different group, or might be help somebody else. So, all right. Yay, lots of people are going to try things, because that for me is the win. I'm happy you enjoyed yourself today. That's always fun too. But for me, it's really the win is if somebody goes and actually tries one of these things and passes it on. pass on the engagement. Pass on.
It'd be fun to figure out a way for people to share that information within TxDLA to say, how did you put this
There
into
you
action,
go.
right?
There you go. Who knows? Maybe a follow-up at the conference. People can come run up and tell us what they did, or they can submit a proposal to say the wonderful successes they had.
Yeah, I would love
How's
to
that?
see that.
How's that for a pitch for your conference? How's that? Built that right in there.
Speaking of that,
you
let's
didn't
go
even pay
ahead
me
and
for that. Look at that.
I know, that's so great. Let's go ahead and wrap up this thing. I'm gonna
stop
can I
sharing.
yeah. So I definitely want to thank Valary so much. I've seen several of your presentations and of course talk to you all the time, and I always take away stuff and I love it, love it, love it. But I do want to remind everyone that next month is our Break the Forgetting Cycle and Get More Math. Maybe we can kind of combine these together. How do we do engagement and, stop forgetting stuff, right? But don't forget to register. Go to TxDLA.org and go to webinars and bite-sized learning, and you'll be able to register for our webinars. Couldn't do this without our amazing partners, from our diamond partners from Anthology, Canvas, and D2L, to platinum with digital resources, silver with Panopto and Howard's Technology Solutions, and our bronze partners, HonorLock, Inside Track, Proctorio, Pronto, Respondus, Science Interactive, and Prairie View A&M Center for Instructional Innovation and Technology Services. Don't want to forget, definitely join us in November 1st through the 3rd for our TxDLA 2023 Fall Leadership Workshop. And also join us in March and April for our 2024 TxDLA Conference on Game On. And definitely join us with all of these different areas. We would love to hear more from y'all, and thank y'all so, so much for being here. And thank you, Valary, for everything. And thank y'all.